Hello everybody, how's it going? It's me, Krendor, and welcome back to Krendor Talks in front of a shitty green screen. Today, we've got some great news about Age of Sigmar 4, as well as Spearhead, all from the US Open in Dallas. I believe that's what it was, US, whatever. The thing that happened in Dallas. A whole bunch of War Scrolls were coming out of that. They actually played a Age of Sigmar 4.0 game where Skaven played against Lumineth, and we pretty much learned a whole bunch of stuff about Sigmar. And then we also saw the box a few days prior to that, where we see the launch box is a whole bunch of the new Skaven models and Stormcast and everything. You've probably seen all of it, but if you haven't, go check it out. It looks cool. So what I want to mainly talk about here is I want to talk about the article they put up today, which is about the faction focuses. And I kind of want to tie that into stuff we've already seen from this past weekend. So just kind of, summarize everything. And then we're going to be getting a bunch of faction focuses going forward, which I think I'm going to make a video for like every faction focus for an army that I play, which is like 3/4 of the army. So obviously there's some that I know better than others and that I play more than others, but I'm genuinely excited to see how every army plays and how their faction focus thing plays out. So here we are. New AOS faction focuses begin tomorrow. Here's what to expect. We've seen Skaventide, the massive launch box for the new edition. So again, if you haven't seen this, I'll show you real quick. Here it is. Looks cool. Skaventide, cool name for it. I would imagine this is going to sell better than the Cruel Boy box because Skaven. And I'm loving that you get like all these miniatures. You get the Spearhead card deck, the GHB, the double side game board. You get a lot of stuff, to be honest, range or whatever. But 50 Skaven miniatures, as well as everything you need to play Sigmar and Spearhead it's pretty good. And then you can go look at this all yourself, but this one's one of my favorite models. I love the Claw Lord on this mangly ass rat cavalry. I love that. The Gray Seer looks really cool. He kind of reminds me of Thanquol on Bone Ripper. Like, he looks very similar to the Thanquol model, and then he's even got the little bell down here that's cracked with the rats running out. I love that. The Engineer, I think he looks okay. This new thing, the Warp Blaster, which has like, I think I saw something that said 6d6 plus 3 shots, which is kind of insane. The new Rat Ogres, which, hey, they're not from 1993, so they look fantastic. Warp Block Giselles, all the clan rats, and then it shows you all the other stuff in the box. Pretty cool. So there you go. I went over it real quick, but back we go. And then Stormcast. I don't play Stormcast. I don't care about Stormcast. I hate humans in all fantasy games. I don't hate them, but like I don't care about them. Some games I do hate them. Anyway, with so many changes, the Warhammer studio took the opportunity to fully re-index the entire game, and they're going to go over everything because it's a lot. A lot of things have changed. One of the key goals for the new edition was to make sure that the rules really reflect the mortal realms, meant that assuring that the characteristics consistently applied, reflecting the lore and the look of the miniature. Each type of creature was assigned a set of characteristics which would serve as a baseline. Basic humans hit on a 4, wound on a 4. Elves are more accurate, but they don't hit as hard, so like they're on a 3-4. Orcs are the opposite. They have a harder time hitting accurately, but they wound more often. The Grots struggle quite a bit on 4s and 5s baseline. Monsters, just in general, are 4s by 2s, because I guess monsters are just really inaccurate, but when they wound, they're wounded, mostly. And then horses are 5 by 3. So the cavalry are, I guess because you're riding on cavalry and you're just like, you're like trying to hit something with a lance or a spear and they can dodge out of the way easier. So like I get the 5s by 3s, and then wounds, I think a 3 is pretty cool. So I really like that they've solidified a baseline, right? Like if you have a generic human lineman or whatever they are, it's like Blood Bowl terms. He's 4s by 4s, right? And Grots 4s by 5s, like the Stabbas and the little shitty guys, like the Orcs are 4s by 3, which is really nice because obviously there's going to be exceptions to these, right? There's going to be elite infantry. There'll be heroes that are better at controlling their monsters, so it's 3s by 2s because they're just, they have more control, they have more accuracy. Like there's going to be a whole bunch of different scenarios, but it's nice to have something as a base, right? Because current Sigmar is just, it's all over the place. It started in a decent spot like back in 2.0, and then things just started getting a little crazier, and then they kept getting crazier, and then it's gotten to a point where if you're not hitting and wounding on like 2x2s, like Ren 2, or at least Ren 1, Ren 2, like 2-3 damage, like you're probably garbage. Or if you're not putting out insane amounts of mortal wounds, because way too many mortal wounds. So it seems like they are dialing back on the mortal wounds, which is very nice. Which they don't say here, but you can see it from a lot of the other war scrolls and like just things that I've seen from looking around, right? Like, mortal wounds are just not that fun to play against, because the only way you save against it is ward saves, and like not everybody has a ward save. It's harder to balance. Then you end up giving everyone ward saves, and then you don't want to just keep handing out ward saves to like literally everybody, and then it was a mess. So I'm really excited with how this is looking. So anyway, elite warriors and brutes or ill-trained fighters and weaklings can modify these baselines, but the archetypes provide a strong and consistent core. Similar approach is taken amongst heroes, helping to differentiate a combat hero from a priest and wizard, which I think is also pretty cool. Obviously, a priest is not going to be hitting very hard because he does not usually fight in combat. More hard work came when we decided how clearly represent health and save characteristics. Hundreds of miniatures were lined up to compare, with health largely defined by their volume and save defined by the amount of armor worn, which I think is actually kind of cool, because I mentioned this in a previous video like months ago, but the fact that when you play the game and you can look across the table and kind of guess what your opponent's thing does is very nice, because you could say, okay, that's a really big thing, but it's got no armor on. So like, it's probably got a lot of health, but it's easy to hit, right? Or, wow, that thing is like super armored up and crazy. So, you know, it's probably got some decent armor and, you know, really good saves. So it's nice to be able to just look at something without knowing the rules of it yet, from even just a new player perspective, and be like, oh, I can probably figure out what that thing does, right? So that's pretty cool. Where did we leave off? Save, blah, 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 those were then grouped together to help decide where brackets for each characteristic would start and end. So that's cool too. After these base characteristics had been determined, the aim was to ensure that every unit had its own role to play on the battlefield. These would be realized by abilities that help to define their strengths and unique traits. So this is a big one, because this is kind of what the current version of the game lacks, is just defined roles for a lot of units. Right now, it's just like, take a unit, buff it up, go kill stuff. And this feels like you're becoming much more of a chess game, where you're like, all right, I have my rook, I have my knight, I have my bishop, I have my king and queen. Like, you have all these defined piece roles. You have your pawns, right? And it feels very much like you now have to add certain things to your army list that you probably wouldn't before, just to play a specific role. So they say each faction in Warhammer Age of Sigmar has its own specialties, preferred tactics, but internal balance is also important. Where an army has access to multiple types of infantry or cavalry or war machine, the rules team took pains to help differentiate them, perhaps giving one unit a focus on holding objectives, one better positional play, and making another unit better at countering specific threats, thanks to a carefully chosen weapon ability. So one place that I saw this was, well, I didn't like see it, but I've heard that oh god, what's he called? The dinosaur, oh god, the Carnosaur. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. They showed off the Carnosaur Spearhead War Scrolls, and for the most part, they say the Spearhead weapon profiles are pretty much the same as the Sigmar ones. Difference being like some of these universal weapon abilities, or like just War Scroll abilities. For example, the Croxagore doesn't have +1 damage in the Spearhead one, but it does in the Sigmar one. So like, okay, stuff like that. But a lot of people saw the Carnosaur and they were like, oh, this guy sucks. He got worse. Me included. I was like, this guy doesn't seem as good. But then when you read a lot of people's posts, they were like, oh, I played with this guy, and they've turned him into what they said right here, into like a objective controlling monster, which I thought was really interesting. So they said that he has an ability where you roll a d6, And I don't know if you get one or the other or both, but you're able to increase your objective control by D6, or you're able to decrease their objective control by D6, or both. And they said it was like insane trying to take something from that Carnosaur. So, I mean, that alone is worth its weight because the game is heavily about controlling objectives. And so I think a lot of people get so focused on like, my thing has to kill stuff. It's got to kill stuff. If it's not killing stuff or like tanking, it's just garbage. But now it has this very defined role. Like maybe the Saurus Old Blood, right? He's like an objective controller, and then he's also like a general. Like he's buffing his units, he's buffing the Saurus warriors, he's doing other stuff. So he's more of a support guy. But if he gets into combat, like he can do enough damage to kill something or get out of combat, right? So I think that is really cool. The fact that all these different roles are now, you're able to assign these roles to different units and make them something that will be useful and not just bad, right? I mean, it could still be bad. I mean, we have to learn about points. We have to learn about, you know, what's going to be the meta. Like, are people building range stuff? Are people going melee? Like, there's a whole bunch of things we got to figure out. But I think we're going in the right direction. And from what everybody said after playing both Spearhead and Sigmar, they said it was really fun. So, I mean, it's sounding great. So, weapon abilities. What I love about these weapon abilities that numerous people have already said as well, unlike 40K, where it's a bunch of just random terminology, it has that in Warhammer Fantasy too, which, you know, it's kind of cool thematically, but once you actually start playing the game for like the first time and you have to learn every single thing and remember it, it's really annoying. Well, this is just like charge +1 damage. And you're like, well, what's that do? Oh, when I charge, I have +1 damage. Cool. Or like crit mortal wound. What's that mean? Oh, when I roll a crit, it does a mortal wound. Oh, I can shoot in combat. What's that do? Oh, I can shoot in combat with this ranged weapon. Right? Like it's in your face. It's telling you this is what this ability does. And I love that. I think some people try to get too cute with it. They're like, these are the like devious wounds. What's that mean? It means when you crit, you do a mortal wound. Well, we'll call it devious. It's like, just call it crit mortal wound. Like, nobody cares. Right? It's kind of fun at first, and after a while, it's like, I just want to know what my thing does, man. Like, that's it. And I want my opponent to be able to figure it out as well. Figure it out easily. So, we have, like, anti-X, like anti-infantry, anti-charge. So, if you get charged, you get +1 rend. If you have anti-hero, if you fight a hero, you get +1 rend, right? Anti-whatever. So, that unit likes to fight that thing. If it's like an anti-hero, you know that unit's going to be going for your hero because it hits better against it. If it's anti-infantry, you know it's going for your infantry. And that allows you to like go back and forth. You're like, I don't want that thing getting into my infantry, so I'm going to try to screen it or move it over here. And then meanwhile, they're like, I got to get into your infantry. But like, you know what? It's not worth it. Maybe I have to sacrifice that and go over here because you're still going to be able to fight and kill stuff with it, but you're not going to be getting that buff that you wanted. So it's going to be encouraging a lot of positional tactics on the game board as well as just scoring your battle tactics. So like, you know, maybe you do that one battle tactic, you have to go take the center and you put some anti-charge stuff there because you're like, hey, you know what? He's going to charge me. So I'm going to put some anti-charge units there. So when he gets charged or when they do charge, I'm going to get buffed and, you know, you're going to give yourself an advantage. Like a lot of positional play is going to come from that, which is really cool. So they say as a result of this role determining process, the way rend works and the weapon profiles has changed, while rend has been reduced overall, which is great. There are many more units with anti-X abilities, meaning they'll hit much harder against their preferred targets. Of course, combat in Sigmar is brutal, so don't expect all rend to go away. Rolling loads of dice only to inflict no wounds is net fun or exciting, which, very true. Right? Like, I still want there to be heavy hitting stuff and big combat and rend, but like, it did get to a point where people were just saving too easily, or you were just killing too easily, and it feels like they're going in a much more strategic, better direction. And I would say thematic direction, because a lot of people, like I mentioned in a previous video about flavor, flavor isn't just abilities. A lot of people seem that it's like command abilities and battle traits, that's where the flavor comes from. But I don't think that's all necessarily true. A lot of flavor comes from what we just looked at, which is the stat profiles, because you think, how does an elf hit? It hits pretty accurately, but it doesn't wound very well. That's thematic. Like, that is flavor. Like, you've got flavor built into these baselines, which is really nice. And then you can see, oh, maybe this elf is a bit stronger. He's the leader, right? So he's stronger, he's got a better weapon, he's on 2s and 3s. So you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. He's hitting better than normal elves. That's thematic. That's adding flavor. And I think a lot of people kind of overlook that at times, right? So they say, the final step was to try and even out the complexity of each faction's battle traits, the army rules that govern how they play. This has resulted in bigger changes for some factions than others, and a reduction in need for tokens when playing factions like Lumineth or Cities, which I think is great. I think that's great. Doing math was always pretty annoying, or like keeping track of annoying things. However, I think this means that disease points are going away for Nurgle, which I love disease, man. It's so fun just putting disease on stuff. It does get annoying, but like, I hope they keep it in some way, because I love the Nurgle disease stuff. It's one of my favorite mechanics in Sigmar, so we'll see if they keep it in some way or how it plays out, but it's fine. And which, by the way, battle traits, Cruel Boys, they can't get any worse, man. It's they have to be foaming at the mouth, just being like, please, new battle traits. As we start to reveal snippets of each of the 24 factions, you'll undoubtedly see things that don't look as powerful as they were in the previous edition. Don't take these in isolation. Literally everything has been refactored, so particular units seeming weaker, chances are similar units have also experienced comparable changes, or its niche has become more valuable. So, for example, like the Carnosaur with objective control, right? That makes sense. This happens like every edition. People, or even just Battletomes, people be like, wow, this rule's gonna be great when I play this army. It's like, you don't even know if that rule and that unit are gonna be the same as what they were. Like, people just take a new thing they see and they're like, well, that's gonna be the only thing that changes. And it's like, what? And people do it so often, they'll just be like, this isn't as good as it used to be, so it's bad. And it's like, well, you're not comparing it to everything that's changing. You're just comparing it to everything that it currently is, which you can't do. Like, even just everything, just stats, abilities, point values, everything. So, cool. The full faction packs contain battle traits, battle formations, heroic traits, artifact powers, and various lores, as well as the spearhead battle traits, regiment abilities, enhancement, and all the war scrolls. They will be available to download as a free FAQ on or around launch, and to buy as physical card packs shortly afterwards. And tomorrow they begin the focus with Stormcast, who I don't care about, so I will not be talking about them. But Skaven, I will be. And if this is any sign of the homes to come, I love Skaven, I have a ton of gits, and I play Nighthaunt. So all these three I care about. Stormcast I do not. There's plenty of other people who play Stormcast. So overall, I'm very excited. I'm not gonna lie, this is the most excited I've been for Sigmar in quite some time. Everything seems really cool, really fun. And even Spearhead, right? Like a just shortened, kind of simplified version of it seems really good for just playing quick games or teaching people the game. So that's going to be fun. I might even do some battle reports of Spearhead on the channel. I think that'd be really fun, where I just play against myself. In fact, I am going to do it because listen, I have 3/4 of the armies. I have so many Spearhead things. I can just play against myself. I'll try to paint some up, so it'll be pretty fun to watch. So we'll do that. It'll be cool. And I'm excited to see what they do for all these, like, especially battle formations, which is the thing where you can, I think that's the thing where you can join regiments, right? So it's like, oh, if you put your general with these units, they get buffed, like these battle formations. I think that's what it was. I don't know. Either way, there's going to be a lot of stuff, and it's going to be fun to look through. So hopefully you enjoyed hearing me rant. Thank you very much thank you for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you next time. Okay? Okay. See ya.